Before menopause changes your body, it changes your brain. And most women never get that warning. Nobody tells you that the first thing that shifts isn't your weight, isn't your cycle, isn't even your energy. The first thing that changes is your mind. It's the way you think. It's the clarity you used to have. It's the memory that was once your greatest strength, the memory that made you sharp, capable, present, reliable, the memory that was just you. And when it starts to happen, you don't understand it. You start asking what's wrong with you. You start questioning yourself. You start hiding what you're feeling because it sounds too strange to say out loud. Because how do you explain to someone that you sat in a parking lot for 10 minutes because you couldn't remember why you drove there? How do you explain that you were in the middle of a sentence and the word you needed, a word you've used 1,000 times, just vanished? How do you tell your family that some mornings you wake up and feel like there's a fog between you and the rest of the world, a fog so thick that even simple things feel overwhelming? You don't say any of that. You just smile. You say you're tired. You say it's stress. You tell yourself it'll pass, but it doesn't pass. And you're starting to wonder if this is just who you are now. I need you to hear this clearly, and I need you to let it sink in. You are not losing your mind. You are not imagining this. You are not being dramatic. What is happening to your brain right now is real. It has a name. It has a mechanism. And, most importantly, it has a path forward. Your brain is under hormonal attack. And almost nobody talks about that. Today, that changes. Because there is a very specific reason why your mind feels different now. There is a reason why you forget words mid-sentence, why you walk into a room and stand there confused, why the mental fog doesn't lift even when you slept, even when you rested, even when you did everything right. There's a reason why you feel emotionally exhausted before the day even begins. There's a reason why your mood shifts in ways that feel foreign to you, like someone else moved into your body and you're just watching from a distance. And there is a group of foods, 5 specific foods, that science is now studying with serious attention precisely because of what they do to the female brain during this phase of life. Foods that don't just nourish the body, but support the nervous system at its core. Foods that reduce brain inflammation. Foods that support neurotransmitter production. Foods that help restore the hormonal scaffolding that your brain has been quietly depending on for decades. Stay with me until the very end of this video, because the number 1 food on this list is the one that surprises women the most. And it's the one that researchers are calling one of the most powerful allies for the female brain during menopause. But before we get there, I need to explain what is actually happening inside your brain right now. Because when you understand the mechanism, when you see the biology, everything is going to make sense. And that terrifying feeling that you are losing yourself is going to begin to lift. Think of your brain as a brilliant, sophisticated city. A modern city. Vibrant. Alive with connections. Signals traveling from one point to another with speed and precision. Every thought is a message delivered. Every memory is a file accessed in seconds. Every emotion is a signal processed and responded to with balance and control. Now imagine that this city depends on one very specific power source to run. This power source doesn't just keep the lights on. It maintains the communication infrastructure. It protects the signal lines. It regulates the emotional control center. It keeps the memory archives organized. It determines how fast and how clearly information moves from one neighborhood of the city to the next. That power source has a name. It's called estrogen. And during menopause, that power source begins to decline. Not slowly, not gently, dramatically, erratically, in waves and crashes that your brain has never experienced before. Estrogen levels during perimenopause and menopause don't just drop, they fluctuate wildly, spike unexpectedly, and fall further each cycle. And your brain, which has been calibrated to that hormonal signal for 30 or 40 years, suddenly doesn't know what to do. Researchers at the University of Arizona studying brain imaging in menopausal women found something that stopped them cold. The female brain during menopause actually enters a period of metabolic transition, a shift in how the brain produces and uses energy. The brain's primary fuel source, glucose, becomes less efficiently used. Certain regions of the brain, the ones responsible for memory, focus, emotional regulation, and verbal processing, show decreased activity. What does that look like from the inside? It looks exactly like what you've been experiencing. Word-finding difficulty, memory lapses, mental fatigue that no amount of sleep seems to fix, emotional reactions that feel disproportionate, a sense of mental slowness that makes you feel like you're thinking through water. You are not broken. Your brain is going through a transition it was never prepared for, and it desperately needs support. Here's something else nobody tells you. Estrogen isn't just a reproductive hormone. It never was. Estrogen is a neuroprotective agent, a brain protector. It helps regulate serotonin, your mood stabilizer. It helps regulate dopamine, your motivation and focus chemical. It modulates cortisol, your stress hormone. It supports the integrity of the hippocampus, the region of your brain most responsible for memory formation. When estrogen begins to decline, it's not just your ovaries that feel it, your entire neurological ecosystem feels it. And here is what makes this particularly cruel. At the same time that estrogen is pulling back, cortisol tends to rise. Cortisol, your primary stress hormone, becomes harder to regulate without estrogen's buffering effect. And high cortisol, especially sustained chronic cortisol, is one of the most damaging things that can happen to memory and cognitive function. Cortisol is like a wrecking ball inside the hippocampus. Studies from McGill University have shown that chronically elevated cortisol literally shrinks the volume of the hippocampus over time, the region you rely on most to store and retrieve memories. So you have declining estrogen starving your brain of neuroprotection. You have rising cortisol creating inflammation and damage to memory structures. You have disrupted neurotransmitter balance, making focus and emotional regulation feel impossible. And underneath all of that, your brain's energy metabolism is shifting in ways science is only now beginning to fully understand. Is it any wonder you don't feel like yourself? Is it any wonder that some mornings you look in the mirror and feel like a stranger is looking back? You are not weak. You are not failing. You are not going crazy. You are a woman whose brain is fighting a battle that is invisible, unacknowledged, and deeply misunderstood by most of the medical establishment. And I want to talk about that for a moment, because one of the most painful parts of this experience, and I hear this from women constantly, is not just the symptoms themselves. It's the dismissal. It's sitting in a doctor's office and being told it's just stress. It's being handed a sleep aid when what you actually need is for someone to explain what's happening to your brain. It's being made to feel like you're exaggerating something that is profoundly, measurably, neurologically real. You deserve better than that. And the women who've discovered what I'm about to share with you have started to feel something they hadn't felt in months, or for some of them, in years. They started to feel like themselves again, not a version of themselves, not a tired, foggy, emotionally unstable shadow. Themselves, clear, present, emotionally grounded, capable, intelligent. That is what's possible. And it starts with understanding what your brain actually needs right now. Before I give you the full list, I want to pause for just a moment, because if you've been struggling with brain fog, emotional exhaustion, or feeling unlike yourself lately, some women in this community have also asked me what additional support I personally trust during this phase of life. I'll leave what I recommend in the first pinned comment and in the description below. But right now, let's talk about food. Because what you eat every single day is either feeding your brain's recovery or making this harder than it needs to be. Let's start with number 5. Food number 5, wild-caught salmon. There's a reason neuroscientists call omega-3 fatty acids brain food. But during menopause, that phrase takes on a meaning far deeper than most people realize. Your brain is approximately 60% fat. That's not a metaphor. That is the literal composition of the tissue inside your skull. And the quality of that fat, the type of fat that makes up your neural membranes, your synaptic connections, the insulating sheaths around your nerve fibers, directly determines how well your brain communicates with itself. Think of it this way. Every thought you have travels along a neural pathway, a connection between brain cells. These pathways are wrapped in something called myelin, a fatty protective coating that allows electrical signals to travel quickly and cleanly. When your myelin is healthy, your thoughts are fast and clear, When your myelin is degraded or inflamed, your thoughts feel slow, jumbled, foggy. Estrogen, among its many roles, helps maintain the health of these myelin sheaths. When estrogen declines, myelin integrity can be compromised. And here is where wild salmon becomes one of the most powerful allies you can have. Wild-caught salmon is one of the richest dietary sources of DHA and EPA, the two most bioavailable forms of omega-3 fatty acids. DHA, in particular, is the dominant structural fat in the brain. It is not just a nutrient, it is a building block. Your brain uses it to repair and reinforce neural membranes, to reduce neuroinflammation, and to support the production of mood-regulating neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. A study published in the journal Nutritional Neuroscience found that women with higher omega-3 intake reported significantly lower rates of cognitive decline and mood disturbances during menopause. Another study from the University of Pittsburgh found that higher DHA levels were associated with larger hippocampal volume, meaning the memory center of the brain was literally better preserved. But here is what makes this particularly important for you right now: neuroinflammation. When estrogen declines, the brain becomes more vulnerable to inflammation. Inflammatory molecules called cytokines begin to interfere with neural signaling, like static on a radio frequency. That static is what you experience as brain fog. That static is what makes word retrieval feel delayed, what makes focus feel slippery, what makes simple decisions feel exhausting. Omega-3s are among the most potent anti-inflammatory compounds that exist in whole food form. They don't just reduce inflammation throughout the body. They specifically cross the blood-brain barrier and reduce neuroinflammation. They quiet the static. Aim for 2 to 3 servings of wild-caught salmon per week. Not farmed, wild. The omega-3 content in wild salmon is significantly higher because wild fish eat a natural diet rich in marine algae, which is the original source of DHA in the food chain. If salmon isn't accessible to you, sardines, mackerel, and anchovies are excellent alternatives. Your brain is starving for this fat. Give it what it needs. Food number 4, blueberries. I want to tell you about a woman I'll call Margaret. Margaret was 52 years old. A project manager at a large firm, a mother of 2 teenagers, someone who had always been known at work for her precision, her ability to juggle multiple projects simultaneously, her sharp memory for details that others forgot. And then, somewhere around the beginning of perimenopause, she started slipping. Small things at first. Forgetting a client's name she had known for years, losing track of conversations mid-meeting, having to reread the same paragraph 3 times because the meaning just wouldn't stick. Then it got worse. She started writing everything down, not because she was being organized, but because she was terrified. She was terrified that if she didn't write it down, it would be gone. And one afternoon at her desk, she closed her laptop, put her face in her hands, and cried, because she thought she was developing early dementia. Because she thought this was the beginning of the end of her mind. She wasn't developing dementia. She was experiencing something that has a name, something that researchers are now studying with urgency, something called estrogen withdrawal cognitive vulnerability. And her brain wasn't broken. It was being deprived of the neuroprotective support it had always relied on. What Margaret didn't know, what most women don't know, is that there are compounds in certain foods that can partially replicate some of the neuroprotective effects that estrogen once provided. They won't replace hormones, but they can meaningfully reduce the neurological damage of their absence. Blueberries contain one of the most powerful groups of these compounds. They're called anthocyanins, the pigments that give blueberries their deep blue color. And anthocyanins are not just antioxidants in a general sense. They are specifically neuroprotective antioxidants that cross the blood-brain barrier. Research from Tufts University found that blueberry consumption was associated with improved memory performance and slowed cognitive aging. A study from the University of Exeter, specifically examining women over 50, found that regular blueberry intake was linked to improved cognitive processing speed and working memory after just 12 weeks. But what's happening at the cellular level? Estrogen decline increases oxidative stress in the brain, a process where free radicals damage brain cells and disrupt neural communication. Anthocyanins in blueberries neutralize these free radicals directly at the brain tissue level. They also stimulate the production of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is essentially a growth hormone for your neurons. BDNF helps your brain repair damaged connections, forge new ones, and maintain the plasticity that keeps your mind agile. Think of BDNF as the brain's maintenance crew, and blueberries as the signal that sends that crew to work. There's more. Blueberries also help regulate the microbiome gut-brain axis, a communication highway between your digestive system and your brain that has a profound effect on mood, cognition, and emotional regulation. A disrupted gut microbiome, which is extremely common during menopause due to hormonal shifts, contributes directly to anxiety, low mood, and cognitive fog. Blueberries feed the beneficial bacteria that keep this axis functioning well. A cup of fresh or frozen blueberries daily is enough to begin experiencing these benefits. Frozen blueberries are just as effective as fresh. In some studies, even more concentrated in anthocyanins. Add them to your morning yogurt, blend them into a smoothie, eat them by the handful, make them a daily ritual. Your brain will notice. Food number 3. Walnuts. Look at a walnut. Really look at it. It looks like a brain. That's not a coincidence that ancient herbalists took very seriously, and while a food shaped like an organ supports that organ is not science, what walnuts contain absolutely is. Walnuts are the only tree nut with a significant amount of ALA, alpha-linolenic acid, a plant-based omega-3 fatty acid. But that's just the beginning of what makes them extraordinary for the menopausal brain. Walnuts contain a unique combination of neuroprotective compounds that almost nothing else in the food supply provides together in one package. They contain polyphenols that reduce neuroinflammation. They contain vitamin E, specifically gamma-tocopherol, a form of vitamin E with particularly strong anti-inflammatory properties in neural tissue. They contain melatonin, which supports sleep architecture. And disrupted sleep is one of the primary drivers of cognitive decline during menopause. They contain folate, which supports neurotransmitter synthesis. And they contain magnesium, which is essential for regulating the nervous system and reducing cortisol reactivity. Let me spend a moment on that last one, because cortisol is something we need to talk about more directly. During menopause, one of the most damaging cycles many women fall into is this. Poor sleep leads to elevated cortisol. Elevated cortisol makes sleep worse. Worse sleep leads to greater brain fog. Greater brain fog creates anxiety. Anxiety elevates cortisol further, and around it goes. Magnesium is one of the most effective natural cortisol regulators we know of. It works by supporting the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which is the body's primary stress response system. When magnesium levels are adequate, the HPA axis doesn't overreact to stressors. The cortisol response is more proportionate. The nervous system stays calmer. Most menopausal women are deficient in magnesium. Studies suggest that up to 75% of adults in Western populations don't meet the recommended daily intake. And the demands on magnesium increase during hormonal transitions because the adrenal glands, which take on a greater hormonal role during and after menopause, require magnesium to function properly. A 2020 study published in the journal Nutrients found that walnut consumption was associated with improved cognitive function scores, better mood indicators, and reduced anxiety in women over 50. The researchers concluded that the synergistic combination of compounds in walnuts, not any single nutrient, but the whole complex working together, was responsible for the effects observed. A small handful of walnuts, about 7 to 9 walnut halves, is the dose most studies have used. Eat them in the afternoon when cortisol tends to spike. Eat them before bed to support melatonin levels. Eat them whenever. Just eat them. Regularly. Before we get to numbers 2 and 1, and I promise you, these are the ones that are going to change how you think about the way you eat. I want to check in with you for a moment, because sometimes, when I share this information, I get messages from women who say, "I've made so many changes. I eat better. I exercise. I sleep as well as I can. And I still don't feel like myself. And I hear that. I hear that deeply. Because food is foundational. It is essential. But for some women, the hormonal disruption during menopause is significant enough that even excellent nutrition doesn't fully close the gap. Some women need additional support, targeted, specific support designed around the biology of what's actually happening in the menopausal brain and nervous system. If that sounds like you, if you've been doing the right things and you're still struggling, I want you to know that you're not failing. Your body may simply need more support than food alone can provide right now. I'll share what I personally think is worth looking into in the first pinned comment and in the description below. But let's keep going, because number 2 is important. And number one is something you may already have in your kitchen right now, and you had no idea what it was doing for your brain. Food number 2, dark leafy greens. I want to talk about something that doesn't get nearly enough attention in the conversation about menopause and cognitive health. It's called folate, and it may be one of the most quietly critical nutrients for the female brain during this transition. Dark leafy greens, spinach, kale, Swiss chard, collard greens, arugula, are among the richest sources of folate in the entire food supply. And folate does something in the brain that almost nothing else can fully replicate. Folate is essential for the synthesis of neurotransmitters, not just one neurotransmitter, multiple. Serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine. These are the chemical messengers that regulate your mood, your motivation, your focus, your emotional resilience. And during menopause, when estrogen is no longer providing its buffering support for these neurotransmitter systems, the raw material availability for their production becomes critically important. Think of folate as one of the key ingredients your brain needs to manufacture its own emotional stabilizers. Without enough folate, the production line slows. The chemicals that make you feel emotionally even-keeled, focused, and motivated become harder to produce in adequate quantities. And what you experience on the surface is mood instability, emotional fragility, difficulty concentrating, and a pervasive low-level anxiety that has no obvious external cause. A large observational study following over 3,500 women found that lower folate intake was significantly associated with higher rates of depressive symptoms during and after menopause. Another study from researchers in Japan found that higher dietary folate was associated with better preservation of verbal memory and processing speed in postmenopausal women. But leafy greens don't stop at folate. They are also extraordinarily rich in vitamin K1, which research from Tufts University has linked to better cognitive performance in older adults. They contain lutein and zeaxanthin, two carotenoids that concentrate in brain tissue and have been associated with sharper neural processing. They are high in nitrates, which the body converts to nitric oxide, a molecule that dilates blood vessels and improves cerebral blood flow, meaning more oxygen and glucose delivered to your brain more efficiently. And then there's magnesium, again, because leafy greens are one of the best magnesium sources in the plant kingdom. There is something else I want to say about leafy greens that goes beyond the nutrients. Eating a large, beautiful salad full of color, texture, and life is an act of self-respect. And during menopause, when it can feel like your body has become the enemy, when it can feel like you are fighting against yourself every single day, small acts of deliberate nourishment matter more than we give them credit for. They are signals you send to yourself, signals that say, I am worth taking care of. My brain is worth fighting for. I am not giving up on myself. 2 to 3 cups of dark leafy greens per day is the target. Sauté them in olive oil, add them to a smoothie, build a salad, layer them into eggs. Find a way that works for you and make it consistent. Consistency is everything. And now, the number 1 food on this list, the one that researchers are increasingly calling a critical ally for the menopausal brain. The one that surprises women most when they discover how much science backs it up. The one that addresses not 1 or 2 of the brain's challenges during this transition, but multiple simultaneously. Are you ready? Food number 1, eggs. I know what you might be thinking. Eggs? Really? That's the big reveal? Stay with me. Because what eggs do for the menopausal brain is extraordinary, and it's a story that most women have never heard. The first chapter of that story is about choline. Choline is a nutrient that most people have never heard of and almost no one talks about. It is not technically classified as a vitamin, but it is essential for brain function in ways that nothing else can replace. And egg yolks are the single richest dietary source of choline on the planet. Here's why choline matters so much right now, specifically for you. Choline is the direct precursor to acetylcholine, one of the most important neurotransmitters in the brain. Acetylcholine is the primary chemical messenger of memory. It is deeply involved in attention, learning, and the process of encoding new information into long-term storage. When acetylcholine production is insufficient, memory begins to fail. Word retrieval becomes difficult. New information doesn't stick. Attention becomes scattered. What happens to acetylcholine during menopause? Estrogen directly supports the cholinergic system, the neural network that runs on acetylcholine. When estrogen declines, cholinergic function declines with it. The neurons that produce and respond to acetylcholine become less active, and the downstream effect is exactly what so many menopausal women describe. That sensation of reaching for a word or a name and finding an empty shelf where it used to be. Choline from eggs supports acetylcholine production. It is the raw material the brain needs to rebuild and sustain the memory chemical it is losing as estrogen retreats. A study from the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health found that higher dietary choline intake was associated with significantly better performance on verbal memory tests and processing speed in middle-aged and older women. Another study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that women with the highest choline intake had measurably lower levels of biomarkers associated with neurological aging. But the story doesn't end with choline. Eggs also contain an extraordinary combination of B vitamins, B2, B5, B9, and B12. These are the B vitamins most critically involved in nervous system function, stress resilience, and the regulation of homocysteine, an amino acid that, when elevated, has been consistently linked to cognitive decline and dementia risk. Estrogen helps keep homocysteine levels in check. When estrogen declines, homocysteine can rise. B vitamins from eggs help counter this effect. Eggs contain tryptophan, the amino acid precursor to serotonin. Serotonin, as you may know, is your primary mood-stabilizing neurotransmitter. Supporting serotonin production through diet becomes more important than ever when estrogen is no longer providing its buffering effect on serotonin signaling. Eggs contain leucine and other amino acids essential for muscle protein synthesis. And this matters for the brain because muscle tissue produces myokines, hormonal signals that communicate with the brain and support cognitive function, mood, and resilience to stress. The connection between muscle health and brain health is one of the most exciting areas of current neuroscience research. And egg yolks contain lutein and zeaxanthin, the same brain-protective carotenoids we talked about in leafy greens. These compounds concentrate in the macular region of the retina and in the prefrontal cortex of the brain, the region responsible for planning, decision-making, emotional regulation, and complex cognitive tasks. Research from the University of Illinois found that higher lutein and zeaxanthin status was associated with better cognitive control and more efficient neural processing in middle-aged adults. 2 whole eggs a day, not egg whites, whole eggs with the yolk, is the dose most associated with cognitive benefit. The yolk is where the magic lives. For decades, women were told to avoid egg yolks because of cholesterol concerns. Current science has thoroughly revised that position. The cholesterol in egg yolks does not raise cardiovascular risk for the vast majority of healthy people. And it is the cholesterol that is essential for synthesizing the steroid hormones your body still needs, including the precursors to estrogen itself. Your brain needs this food. Eat the whole egg. Now, I want to bring all of this together for a moment before we close. We've talked about 5 foods: wild salmon for omega-3s and neuroinflammation, blueberries for anthocyanins and BDNF, walnuts for magnesium, melatonin, and cortisol regulation, dark leafy greens for folate, neurotransmitter support, and cerebral blood flow, and eggs for choline, B vitamins, and acetylcholine. the memory chemical. These 5 foods together address the main biological mechanisms driving your cognitive and emotional symptoms during menopause: neuroinflammation, oxidative stress, cortisol dysregulation, neurotransmitter depletion, acetylcholine decline, sleep disruption, disrupted gut-brain signaling. This is not a random list of healthy foods. This is a targeted nutritional strategy based on what your brain specifically needs right now in this phase of your life, given what is happening hormonally and neurologically. But I also want to be honest with you about something, because I think you deserve honesty, not false hope, not inflated promises. For some women, dietary changes alone, even excellent ones, are not enough to fully address the magnitude of what's happening during menopause. The hormonal disruption is significant. The neurological effects are real and sometimes severe. And depending on where you are in your transition, how long you've been experiencing these symptoms, and how your individual biology responds, you may find that food gives you meaningful improvement but doesn't completely close the gap. That is not a failure. That is biology. There are additional tools, specific botanical compounds and adaptogenic herbs with real scientific backing, that researchers are studying for their role in supporting the female brain and nervous system during menopause. Things like sensoril R ashwagandha, which has been studied for its ability to lower cortisol and improve stress resilience and cognitive function. Rhodiola rosea, an adaptogen with research behind its effects on mental fatigue, focus, and mood stability under hormonal stress. Schisandra berry, traditionally used and now studied for its effects on cognitive endurance and emotional balance. Sage leaf, which has shown in clinical trials to support memory and cognitive recall specifically in menopausal women. And green select phytosome, R, a form of green tea extract with enhanced bioavailability that has been studied for its antioxidant and neuroprotective properties during hormonal transition. These aren't fringe ideas. They're not magic. But the emerging research is genuinely promising, and for women who are doing everything right with diet and lifestyle and still not feeling fully themselves, they represent a meaningful next step worth considering. If you've been struggling and you're looking for that additional layer of support, I'll leave a link to the supplement I personally trust most for this phase of life in the first pinned comment and in the description below. It combines several of the compounds I just mentioned, along with others, including chasteberry, black cohosh, and red clover, in doses consistent with clinical research. It's called MenoRescue TM, and the women in this community who've shared their experiences with it consistently describe the same thing: a gradual return to clarity, a steadying of mood, a sense of feeling more like themselves. I'm not going to oversell it. It is a support, not a cure. And it works best as part of exactly the kind of nutritional foundation we've been building together today. Before I share my final thoughts, I want to ask you something. Because one of the things I care about most in this community is that women feel seen and heard, not lectured at, not talked over, seen. So I want to ask you, what was the symptom that first made you realize menopause might be affecting your mind? Was it the brain fog, the word-finding difficulty, the emotional swings that felt foreign to you, the exhaustion that no amount of rest would fix, the feeling of not recognizing yourself? Leave it in the comments, because your experience matters. And because the women watching this video alongside you, the ones who feel alone with these symptoms, the ones who haven't told anyone yet, the ones who are still convinced it's just them, they need to know that they're not alone. And your words might be exactly the thing that helps another woman feel less invisible today. And now, I want to close with something I've been thinking about throughout this entire conversation with you. I've been thinking about all the women who came to this video afraid they were losing themselves, afraid they were becoming someone they didn't recognize, afraid that the sharp, focused, emotionally grounded woman they had always been was somehow disappearing, and that no one around them could see it, and that even if they could see it, there was nothing to be done. And I want to say something directly to you. Wherever you are right now, you are not disappearing. You are in a transition. A biological transition that is real, that is demanding, that is, let's be honest, profoundly unfair in how little support women are given to navigate it. A transition that has been minimized and dismissed and misunderstood for too long. but a transition that has a biology, a mechanism, a set of specific challenges that specific strategies can meaningfully address. Your brain is not broken. Your brain is not abandoning you. Your brain is asking for something it has never had to ask for before, because until now, estrogen was providing it automatically. And now, for the first time, your brain needs you to actively provide what hormones once did for free. That is what these foods do. That is what the right support does. It answers the request your brain is making. It says, I hear you. I see you. I am going to give you what you need. The clarity that felt like it was slipping away, it can come back. The emotional stability you thought you'd lost for good, it can return. The sense of being present, fully present, in your body and your mind, in your conversations and your relationships and your work, that is not gone. It has not left you permanently. It is waiting for the right conditions to re-emerge. And here is what I most want you to take away today. The brain fog, the memory lapses, the emotional exhaustion, the feeling of not being yourself. These are not signs of permanent decline. They are signs of a brain under hormonal stress. And brains under stress can, with the right support, recover, adapt, rebuild, regain resilience. You were not meant to disappear inside your own mind. That was never supposed to be your story. You were meant to move through this transition, through it, not under it, and to come out on the other side knowing yourself better than you ever have before. Knowing your body, understanding your biology, equipped with real tools and real knowledge and real community. That is what you deserve. That is what's possible. Start with these 5 foods. Start today, not tomorrow, today. Because every meal is either contributing to your brain's recovery or making this harder. And you've been making this harder than it needs to be without even knowing it. Not because of anything you did wrong, but because no one ever told you what your brain needed during this time. Now you know. And knowledge, in this moment, is one of the most powerful things you have. If you found this video helpful, please share it with a woman in your life who is going through this. She might not know that what she's experiencing has an explanation. She might not know that there are things she can do right now to start feeling better. She might be sitting alone with these symptoms, afraid to say them out loud. Your share might be the thing that changes something for her. And if you want additional support, the kind that goes beyond what food alone can provide, the link is in the first pinned comment and in the description below. Take care of your brain. Take care of yourself, because the world needs you clear, present, and fully alive. And you deserve to feel that way again.